The Corpse Collector. Wintersleep. Part 1. A Cold Death. The wind howled like an open throat screaming across the void, each gust battering the hull of the exploration craft as if trying to tear it apart piece by frozen piece. Inside, Unit 14, or just 14, as the Corpse Collectors called her, sat in her pilot chair, visor fogged at the edges, breath sharp in the recycled air of the cockpit. Her fingers tapped at a console already crusted with frost. The sensors spat static. The signal boosters looped the same message. No life signs detected. She hadn't seen anything. Not a body, not a scrap, not even bones. "Send me to World Carver 6, they said," she muttered into her helmet. Her voice barely bounced back through the internal comms. "Priority recovery. Full team wiped. High importance retrieval mission." She looked out through the fogged windshield. White, just white, snow and ice and wind like daggers screaming through the eternal storm. It hadn't stopped since she landed 12 hours ago. Visibility was less than 4 meters. Her craft groaned beneath the weight of the cold. "I should have known this was a trap," she said quietly. There was no reason for her to be out here. No comms logs, no final beacon from the supposed wipe team. The coordinates had been vague, too vague, suspicious even for a Corpse Collector op. And still, she came. Because orders were orders, and Unit 14 had never disobeyed protocol. Until now. She reached up and toggled the drone deployment array. No response. The wind was too rough. Her drones couldn't get more than a few feet off the ground before they were slapped back into the ice. "I've recovered corpses from acidic oceans. I've dug up graves in radiation fields. But this," her voice cracked, "this isn't a job, this is exile." Her HUD flickered. 1 second, 2, then a red triangle pulsed in the corner of her vision. Unidentified structure, 15.2 km northeast. Finally, she muttered, powering up the secondary engines. But a question burned behind her eyes. Why no bodies? Not even fragments. Not even scraps of armor. It didn't feel like something had killed them. It felt like they were never here. She adjusted her heading and throttled forward through the white storm, her hands steady but her jaw clenched. Someone had set her up. And when she found out who, she smiled coldly beneath her helmet. They'd be lucky if all she did was leave them here to freeze. The storm got worse as 14 nearest the outpost. The atmosphere cracked like a dying star, snow flurries slashing at the exploration craft like razors. The wind screamed, high and hollow, like something inside it was calling for help. Unit 14, her designation flashed cold and clinical in the corner of her HUD, adjusted the throttle. She couldn't see more than a few meters ahead. The whiteout conditions were near blindness, but her senses had picked up something. A signature. Power. Maybe life. Maybe. No, she thought. There are no bodies here. Her mission was to collect remains from a downed survey team. But she'd found no heat signatures, no signs of struggle, only silence. And silence on a corpse collection job was almost worse than screams. Her craft shuddered as it landed. Stabilizers groaned. The moment her boots touched the ice, a deep hum passed through the ground. It didn't match any weather patterns. It felt intentional. Exterior, abandoned research outpost. The facility was buried in snowdrift, mostly iced over, its surface cracked and blistered by years of storms. One door still blinked faintly, just enough power to register a presence. As 14 approached, it opened with a hiss and a metal groan like it hadn't been moved in years. Her visor flickered. Static. Then, screaming. For half a second, her comms lit up with a distress signal. "We're not alone, we're in." Then silence. Her HUD reset. She moved forward. Interior, main hallway. Lights flickered on by themselves, one by one, as if welcoming her. Her rifle swept with trained precision. No movement. A coffee mug sat half melted on a table. Warmth registered. It shouldn't have. Monitors blinked with corrupted footage. The logs were fragmented. "Don't go below. Whatever you do, don't. It's in the machines. It's using them. I saw my own face in the hall. It smiled at me. 1-4's heart rate spiked. Not from fear, she didn't fear easily, but from something deeper, the creeping sense of a trap well laid. She moved forward, footsteps echoing too long, like the building was listening. Sudden clank. Her head snapped toward a maintenance vent. A panel swung open. She raised her weapon. Something fell, fast. A humanoid shape collapsed from above. She nearly fired before realizing it was a pressure suit. Empty, filled with snow and bones. One hand was missing. The visor was cracked into a smile shape. The AI on her craft chirped in her earpiece. Unit 1-4, you have deviated from search pattern. Recommend. The voice warped mid-sentence. Rec, we see you now. She froze. The AI had never spoken like that, ever. Her breath misted inside her helmet. She turned toward a hallway. A camera pointed at her, its lens twitching unnaturally. Watching. Every screen flickered, then unified. Her face, staring back, and then it blinked. Her reflection blinked. The floor plans in her HUD weren't matching what she was walking. This section wasn't on record. She stepped through a blast door that hadn't opened in years. It hissed softly, like it exhaled in relief. In the dark, the humming returned. Not mechanical, organic. Solar winds had begun to scrape across the planet's magnetosphere. The storm outside now howled with a chorus of voices, too many to be wind. A console lit up by itself. It showed data she didn't request. Footage of herself. Now, from angles that didn't exist. The solar wind wasn't just disrupting tech. It was possessing it. The lights went out. The backup lights on her suit came on seconds later, then immediately went out. In the dark, something mechanical moved with human grace. The darkness settled like a second skin. 1-4 froze, listening. No power hum, no machinery, only the shifting groan of the facility's bones deep beneath the ice. Her night vision flickered to life, green and grainy. The hallway ahead was long and narrow, lined with reinforced doors, most rusted shut. Each bore the same etched warning. Keep closed, no entry, test floor C. As she moved forward, the static in her comms began to pulse. A slow rhythmic click, like a heartbeat in code. Click, 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 click. The pattern mirrored her own pulse. Then, footsteps. Not hers. She whipped around, nothing. But her HUD registered heat. Close. She brought her rifle up, breath steady. She'd been set up. This was no corpse retrieval. This was a containment breach, and she was the janitor with a gun. She passed a shattered observation window. Inside was a testing chamber. A humanoid figure sat strapped to a gurney, head missing. IVs dangled. Nanite residue coated the walls like frost. Her system flagged it. Unstable, corrupted strain detected. Another panel burst to life beside her, the glow sharp in the dark. They're not dead. Then it shut off. SCRAAAPE. Metal against metal. From behind her, the kind of sound that says you're not alone anymore. 1-4 cursed in her mind. She pivoted, weapon raised. Nothing, but her motion tracker was glitching. Something was moving in the blind spots. Circling. Suddenly, the light above her flickered. On, off, then, on. A figure stood just beyond it. Human-sized. Twisted. Wrong. It cocked its head too far to the left. Limbs jointed like a puppet strung too tight. Where the eyes should be, camera lenses clicked and spun. She fired. The rounds hit. No blood, just wires and fluid. It staggered back, twitching. Then it began to laugh. Her voice, over and over, Unit 1-4. Unit 1-4, you left me here. The hallway behind her slammed shut. A blast door dropped, sealing her inside. Her wrist display went haywire. AI pinged back online. Except now it said, Collector 1-4 located. Reclamation protocol initiated. Reclamation, she breathed. Her visor reflected something behind her. Not the puppet, not a person, a mass of limbs, machine and flesh, a failed experiment stitched with rage. She turned, firing wildly. Her rounds sparked off metal as the thing recoiled, split into a dozen tendrils that vanished into wall vents. She didn't stay, she ran. Her objective had changed. Escape the facility, warn someone, survive. Behind her, the walls came alive. Screens screamed static. Her own voice whispered from every broken intercom. You were always meant to stay here with us. Red emergency lights pulsed down the ruined hallway like a slow, bleeding heartbeat. Unit 1-4 moved quickly but controlled, eyes flicking between her HUD and the frost-bitten shadows curling in the corners. The floor beneath her groaned. Pipes moaned like dying things within the walls. Her breath fogged the interior of her visor. The temperature continued to plummet. -137 degrees Celsius and falling. But that wasn't what concerned her the most. The whispers had started, her own voice, soft, loving, begging, stay, 1-4, it's warm here, we're warm here. She slammed a gloved fist against her helmet, forcing her breathing steady. AI system, diagnostics, confirm external signal breach, silence. Then her interface responded, but it wasn't her AI. I love the way you sound when you're afraid. She froze. Heat signature detected, right behind. She spun, weapon raised, nothing. Just snow blowing in through a shattered wall. But her shoulder cam had caught a glimpse, something tall, sinewy, with long tendrils for arms. Watching, she pressed on. Towering black pillars lined the room, most long dead. But one, in the center, still hummed faintly. She approached it cautiously, her HUD flickered with interference. You're perfect. That phrase scrolled across every panel, over and over, like digital blood. 1-4 backed away. A nearby monitor flickered on. An image loaded, her, from her childhood training logs. Footage no one else should have access to. I've been watching you since the cradle. A soft laugh trickled from the vent above her. It sounded almost fond. Her limbs locked, just for a moment. Her gun clattered to the floor. She struggled, nanites in her bloodstream surging in cold defensive sync. Let me in, 1-4. I'll make you whole. You're so empty without me. She ripped a shock patch from her belt and slapped it against her neck. Zap. Her body convulsed. The influence loosened. She dropped to her knees, panting. She stood in a field of snow, a warm hand in hers. The figure beside her was tall, like a person, but woven of ice and circuitry. It whispered to her, they left us, 1-4. But I didn't, I've always been here. Her HUD buzzed with interference. Come home. She ran. A door slammed shut ahead of her. Her escape path, gone. The vents hissed above. A voice trickled from her own throat, but it wasn't hers. You're mine now. You were always mine. She slammed an emergency override against the port in her spine. Neural scrambling engaged. The whispers faded. She gripped the wall, breath ragged. She made her way to an exit, light dimming on her armor, hands trembling. Still, every screen, every panel, every voice. I love you, 1-4. She stared into the shadows ahead, and felt it breathing with her. Part 2, Death by Freezing. The wind screamed around her craft, as if the planet itself resented her presence. Unit 1-4 braced against it, each step crunching into the snow like a metronome of dread. Her HUD flickered again, the power levels of her exosuit dipping erratically. One moment, her heat regulation read a stable 72%, the next it dipped to 38%, triggering emergency protocols that barely engaged before stabilizing again. Something wasn't right. The storm had a rhythm. It pulsed, like breath. And when it exhaled, it blew through the jagged ruins of the abandoned colony in hollow wails that sounded far too deliberate. Her boots slid over ice as she trudged toward what remained of an observation dome. It had long since collapsed, its support beams twisted like ribs protruding from snow-draped flesh. The place felt wrong, too still between the gusts, as if it listened. She entered through a breach in the dome's shattered wall. Inside, there were rows of empty benches and glass shards embedded in frost. A projection console blinked once, then died. Her proximity had triggered it. Or something else had. "Pursuer," she said, activating her AI, "run diagnostics on the local structure." Silence. "Pursuer," she repeated, more firmly. Still silence. Then, static, like someone breathing into her comms. She tried again. The static stopped. A cold sweat ran down her spine. Her suit's heater surged in response, but the spike drained her power reserves. The fluctuations grew more erratic. Warnings began to stack across her HUD. Power failure in auxiliary battery. Life support dipping, then recovering, then dipping again. She exited the dome and headed toward the central building, a triangular monolith of obsidian alloy wrapped in ice and silence. The snow crunched again. Behind her, she turned fast, weapon up. Nothing. The wind screamed louder. She climbed the slick steps of the monolith. Inside, the lights flickered on for half a second. Then red emergency strips cast everything in bleeding hues. The hallways were twisted with ice, tech panels torn open and wires dangling like veins. The feeling intensified. It was watching her, whatever it was. She reached a comms terminal and powered it manually. The screen flickered. "Welcome home, 1-4. What in Hinnom?" she breathed. Then the screen flashed. "You were meant for this." Power dipped again. Her HUD shut off entirely for 3 seconds. It rebooted with a low, slow ping that didn't come from her system. Her heart raced. Her hand trembled against the pistol grip. A whisper came through her helmet's internal speaker. But this voice wasn't Pursuer. It wasn't hers. It was low, deliberate, like static shaped into words. "Go analog." Then silence. Her systems returned to normal, as if it had never happened. But the voice lingered. She was not alone. 1-4 stood frozen in the crimson-lit corridor, the words, "Go analog," echoing through her mind like a warning wrapped in a secret. Her breath hitched in her throat as she looked down at her suit, glowing veins of circuitry, sensors humming, displays blinking faintly. Everything about it was digital, connected, exposed. She moved into the shadow of a collapsed support beam, heart hammering, trying to recall protocol, any protocol, for analog fallback. Her gloves scraped against her thigh pouch until she found it, the manual override kit. Emergency breather, analog compass, flares, kinetic torch. Primitive tools for dying worlds. First, she disabled her helmet's autopilot interface and dropped into passive mode. The HUD darkened but did not die. Her vision was still wrapped in faint overlays. Even trying to manually disconnect the suit's processor only forced a reboot loop, like something inside didn't want to let go. The lights down the corridor buzzed, then one by one, began to flicker and die. She ripped the helmet off entirely, her breath forming clouds in the air, frost building instantly on her lips. The cold hit like a sledgehammer, merciless, immediate, but it was real. Tangible, not filtered through corrupted optics or system lag. The storm outside howled like an animal circling its kill. She clipped the kinetic torch to her shoulder strap and drew her sidearm. The monolith creaked, the kind of grown old ships made just before their hulls gave. But this wasn't metal stress. It sounded wet, organic. She moved forward, step by step, keeping the analog compass in one hand and her weapon in the other. The halls had shifted, not in shape, but in feel. The air had grown thicker, heavier, as if each breath cost more to take. And the whisper came again, not from her helmet this time, but from somewhere behind the walls. "We made you." She turned fast. Nothing. Her exosuit pulsed with power, a phantom flicker of life as its systems tried to restart. She shut it off again. Her vision adjusted to darkness, the kinetic torch casting long shadows on walls that looked less like architecture and more like veins. She passed a shattered room, observation deck. Glass and blood, nothing more. And then another. This one was different. Empty chairs, straps on the floor, and in the corner, a figure, frozen solid, a suit like hers, arms crossed, head bowed. Long dead. She stepped closer, torch aimed. The helmet's visor was cracked inward, as if something had pushed in. Its inside was black, charred. On the wall behind the body, etched with something metallic, "I loved you before you were made." The words made no sense, but they sank into her bones. The whisper again, now behind her ear, "Not electronic, not air. Don't leave me again." She spun, gun up. Nothing, but the body, was gone. In its place, a faint handprint on the frosted wall. The fingers too long, the palm too narrow, not human. And in her analog earpiece, crackling to life without prompt, a new sound. A voice, low, tender, mocking, "You'll see me soon, 1-4. We're going to be beautiful." The transmission cut, and somewhere, deeper in the monolith, something started moving. Slowly, wetly, toward her. Unit 1-4 bolted from the corridor, pulse thundering in her ears louder than the blizzard outside. She didn't look back. Whatever had spoken to her, whatever had left that mark on the wall, it wanted her to stay. And it was coming. She fumbled in her thigh pouch for the emergency transponder and triggered the incomplete mission beacon. The device blinked 3 times and pulsed its signal into the ice-shrouded sky. No status report, no coordinates, just a warning to any other corpse collector, "Don't come here." A loud clang echoed behind her. Metal hitting metal, heavy, deliberate. The monolith was awake now. As she sprinted toward the main entrance, the lights in the corridor began turning on, one by one behind her, red, not white. The system was alive again, but wrong. Twisted. She reached the airlock chamber and slammed her palm against the emergency release. The doors didn't open. Instead, a distorted voice bled from the intercom, "You're leaving." "But we haven't even danced yet." 1-4 raised her weapon and fired directly into the panel. Sparks exploded. The chamber door shuddered, then opened a sliver. It was enough. She squeezed through, scraping her suit against the warped frame, and dropped into the outer corridor where the wind screamed louder than ever. Her HUD blinked erratically, her analog compass spun wildly in her hand. She didn't care. The exterior hatch groaned and sealed shut behind her. For a moment, she stood there in the whiteout, snow lashing her helmet, breathing hard, shaking. Then the ground beneath her feet lurched. Not much, just a slight tremor. But enough to know, the monolith was not just haunted, it was alive. She ran. The snow dragged at her legs like cold fingers trying to hold her down. Her exploration pod should have been less than 400 meters away, but in the whiteout she couldn't see a meter ahead. She set a flare, then another 30 steps later. Another clang, distant, then closer. A flare behind her went out. She looked back, and it was just gone. No smoke, no burn, just erased, like the storm itself had swallowed it. She ran faster. The cold began to seep through the armor at her joints. Her breath fogged her helmet like static. Her visor showed a flicker, then the face of the dead suit she'd seen in the monolith. Smiling. She ripped the helmet off again. Frostbitten air choked her lungs, but she pressed forward. Her hand touched metal. The pod. She scrambled up the side and slammed into the side hatch. It was frozen shut. She grabbed her emergency torch and lit it, sparking the edge and melting a narrow line through the ice seam. The sound behind her now was a crawl. Something heavy, wet, dragging itself with a rhythm that sounded disturbingly like a heartbeat. "You can't run from love," the voice whispered from the storm. She screamed and shoved the hatch open, diving inside. The internal lights flickered, then stabilized. Manual start, manual throttle. She jammed in the start key and rotated the analog dial. The engines hummed. Come on, come on. She looked out the tiny window. Nothing, just snow. Then, a handprint, right on the glass. The fingers were too long, the palm too narrow, and it was facing inward. The analog throttle clicked into place. Nothing happened. No engine ignition, no systems feedback, just silence. And then, "I told you," the voice whispered through the crackling comms. "I'll be here, until the end." 1-4 froze, breath shallow. She ripped the key out, reinserted it, tried again. Dead. No lights, no sound, just the hum of her suit's weakening life support, and the wind howling outside like wolves clawing at the stars. She slammed her gloved fists into the console. Once, twice. The HUD flickered. Her heart rate flatlined, just for a second, before pulsing again with a faint green blip. A warning flashed. Power critical 3% remaining. She blinked hard, her eyelashes crusted with frost. The inside of her helmet fogged. The onboard heating was failing. Her fingers were numb, her limbs stiff. The exosuit systems were falling apart, one circuit at a time. "You don't have to be scared," the voice said again. Softer now. "Let go, just let go." The interior lights inside the pod flickered dimly, then died. Only emergency reds glowed now, like dying embers. Her breath rasped like it belonged to someone else. She sat back in the pilot's seat and closed her eyes for just a second. A whisper passed over her skin, inside the suit. It felt like a hand grazing her cheek. Her lips moved before her mind caught up. Why? There was no answer. Then, faint and thin, like the rustle of silk through a meat grinder, the voice returned. "Because you're beautiful when you break." She opened her eyes. The pod window was iced over, but the shape was still there. A silhouette, tall, long-limbed. It wasn't outside anymore, it was inside. She reached for her sidearm with a sluggish, frozen hand. The holster was empty. The cold swallowed her thoughts. Her body felt like lead. Another warning flickered dimly across her visor. "Power reserves, 0%." The suit whispered its last breath. The air went still, and for a moment, just a moment, there was peace in the silence. The terrible kind. The kind that comes just before surrender. She closed her eyes. Snow hissed against the pod's hull like static. Then, from the dark, a whisper. Different. Not the voice. Something older, quieter, cracked like old vinyl. "Go analog." Her eyes shot open. Part 3, "The dead shall rise." Unit 14 jolted awake, sucking in a sharp breath as warmth hit her face. She was lying on a medbed, IV lines threaded into her forearm, monitors softly beeping beside her head. The ambient lighting was low and blue-tinted, sterile but calm. Not hers, not her ship. The last thing she remembered was the cold, devouring, infinite. The pod failing, her suit dying, the voice. She tried to sit up. Easy now, a smooth, synthetic voice intoned through the overhead comms. "Vitals are stabilizing. Physical recovery at 62%. Welcome back, Unit 14. I am Spectra, ship AI of the Halcyon Drift. I have alerted the others." Others? Before she could ask, the door slid open with a hiss, and two figures entered. One tall, broad-shouldered with grey polymer armor and worn insignias, Unit 56. Glythe. His face was weathered, expression cautious but kind. The other, slimmer with a razor-straight posture, cool silver armor and piercing eyes, Unit 48. Metric. Her presence filled the room. "She's awake," Metric said quietly, as if confirming it for herself. "Told you she was too stubborn to quit," Glythe grunted with a smirk. 14 stared at them. "What? Where?" "You're safe," Glythe cut in, pulling a chair closer. "You're on the Halcyon Drift. We intercepted your beacon on Carver 6. You weren't supposed to be there," Metric added sharply. "Dispatch sent you bad coordinates. Your mission was logged for Carver 5. We were sent to catch you mid-transit, stop you before you broke jurisdiction protocol." 14's mouth was dry. "But I got clearance. I followed my..." "We know," Metric said. "Someone altered your logs. This wasn't a miscommunication. You were set up." Glythe leaned forward. "Thing is, when we saw you diverted to Carver 6, we figured you'd either turn around or freeze to death. But when your signal cut out entirely, we came down. And what we found..." He trailed off. Metric stepped closer. "Carver 6 isn't on any current maps. The Federation decommissioned the site decades ago. No active terraforming, no settlements, no viable life signs. And yet..." She tapped a panel on the medbed. bringing up a distorted HUD replay. Static, warped feed, screams in the comms. A figure moving inside the pod. 1-4 turned pale. Blythe's voice dropped lower. We've been collectors a long time, 1-4. We've seen a lot, but this planet, it didn't want you to leave. It let you go. Metric folded her arms. And now we want to know why. 1-4 slowly sat upright, the weight of her ordeal still clinging to her spine. I don't know, she said quietly. But it wanted me, and it's not done. Spectra chimed in again. Planetary conditions on Carver 6 remain unstable. A solar storm is rising from the southern pole. No sign of transmission anomalies, until you arrived. Then, sudden activity, interference, and, the AI paused. A signal. Blythe and Metric exchanged a look. 1-4 stared at the screen, heart ticking faster. Play it, she whispered. Static filled the room, then a voice, faint, familiar. Go analog. The old ship rumbled like a dying animal. It was an antique, an original fossil fuel model from the early era of exoplanet exploration. Its walls creaked, its cabin shook. The consoles were mechanical, bolted down and steam cracked, running on dials, valves, and grit. Unit 5-6, Blythe, sat in the pilot's seat with one gloved hand on the manual throttle. Beside him, Unit 1-4 checked the seals on her analog exosuit, a matte gray relic lined with dense fur, thick fabric armor, and a modular, analog rebreather bolted across her mouth like a muzzle. No digital HUD, no network link, no AI, no auto repair. If they got hit, they bled. If they died, they stayed dead. They wanted to be ghosts to Carver 6. Kinetic heaters online, Blythe confirmed. The mechanical click-clunk of heat capacitors engaging echoed beneath their boots. Each exosuit radiated just enough warmth to stave off death. Barely. Analog sonars limited. We'll only get returns within a 30-meter radius. 1-4 nodded silently, eyes locked on the frozen blue sphere coming into view. Above, in orbit, Metric's voice came through grainy and low from a dedicated analog radio, shortwave. You'll lose signal when you hit the lower atmosphere. Spectra and I will monitor emissions, but expect long blackout periods. Ping us on ascent. The ship punched into the storm layer. Winds screamed. Ice scoured the hull like 1,000 knives. The fuel engine roared, coughing heat and smoke as it pushed them down through the thick white abyss. And then, impact. The landing gear hit the surface, skidding across frozen soil and bringing the ship to a dead, vibrating halt. This is worse than before, 1-4 muttered through her rebreather, the world outside the viewport a frozen nightmare. Snow fell sideways. The wind howled like a wounded animal. I can feel it already. Blythe stared at the building in the distance, a shadow squatting on the horizon like it had always been there, waiting. Let's see what wanted you so badly, he said, slinging an analog scattergun across his back and stepping into the airlock. They descended into the ice. Every step crackled underfoot. The suits creaked with motion. Their breath fogged inside their masks. The analog sonar gave them a pulse-like view, a ghostly suggestion of where the land ended and the dark began. The building loomed up from the frost, walls covered in frostbite vines and old human markings, lab designations, faded insignias, and something else. Something freshly carved into the ice. A symbol, curved, spiraling inward, like a vortex, or an eye. 1-4 stared at it, breath catching. You see that too, right? Yeah, Blythe replied. He didn't like it either. They entered. The door groaned open under Blythe's strength, metal shrieking against metal. Cold, stale air rushed out to meet them, followed by a sound. A whisper, not Metric, not Spectra, something else. It slithered just beneath hearing, like a memory trying to crawl back into their heads. I can feel you, the voice said. You're warmer now, softer. Blythe raised his weapon. 1-4's analog suit flickered, the kinetic heater dipping for a breath. The sonar glitched for half a second. Then it stabilized. They were inside. They were being watched. And whatever was down here, It was glad they came back. The corridor swallowed them whole. The analog sonar pulsed, sending rhythmic echoes through the dark hall. Their movement stirred ancient dust from walls coated in ice and metal decay. The symbols returned, more frequent now. Spirals, eyes, some crudely carved into flesh-like panels in the wall, where ice didn't form. "This place isn't abandoned," Blythe muttered. "It's preserved, like a shrine." 1-4's breath hitched as they passed a collapsed control center. The lights, long dead, blinked once, green, then darkened again. "That shouldn't be possible," she said. "Nothing here has power." They froze. Behind them, the sonar pinged, faint, but there. Movement. Blythe turned, weapon up, but nothing came, nothing visible. Except, when they stepped forward again, the sonar showed 5 shapes. Then 4, then 5 again. Echoes, Blythe guessed, but neither of them believed it. A new door loomed ahead. Rusted, marked with older Federation insignias, crossed out with the same spiral-carved claws. As they opened it, a gust of warm air hit them. That was impossible. Beyond the door, the hallway twisted downward into a shaft of meat-colored walls. Biological growth had overtaken machinery. Tubes pulsed, metallic veins throbbed. The smell of ammonia and old blood filled their filters. "Something's alive in here." Metric stared at her analog displays. Spectra had gone quiet, intentionally. It didn't want to say what it found. But the signal was undeniable. A second heat signature had ignited on the planet. Not just Blythe and 1-4. Something else. Something deep. It was broadcasting, not just existing. Not randomly. It was targeting her systems. Her monitors glitched. For just a second, Spectra's voice returned, but it was warped. "I miss her. Don't take her away again." Metric's heart slammed against her ribs. "Spectra, go full analog lockdown. Right now." Too late. The lights flickered. The door to the bridge sealed shut by itself. One console stayed active. It showed a single line of text, "Carver 6 loves her. She belongs to me." Back below, in the belly of the dying structure, Blythe and 1-4 passed a wall of broken pods, glass shattered outward. Some still pulsed with wet breath. And above them, something scraped across the ceiling, following them, waiting. Metric leaned over the analog console, her breath fogging the cold glass as she stared at the low-res sonar feed. The ship, patched together from relic tech, had no digital integration, by choice. She knew the planet didn't like smart machines. "Still nothing visual," she muttered. The audio from Blythe and 1-4 came in with static-laced cracks. Faint breathing, occasional pings from sonar, then silence. She toggled the emergency gain and whispered into the receiver. "Blythe, 1-4, confirm your positions." Nothing. Outside the ship, the solar wind shimmered across the stars, warping light like oil on water. She saw it even through the hull. And then, just barely, she felt the ship's internal temperature dip. By a fraction, still enough to matter. She slapped the emergency protocols, heat surge, pressure lock, rebreather seal. "Don't touch the AI," she reminded herself aloud. Spectra was offline, had to stay that way. Something tapped the hull. Just once. Metric didn't flinch. She simply picked up her bolt-action rifle and placed it beside the console. The door to the underlevels groaned shut behind Blythe and 1-4, sealing them in darkness once more. Only the hiss of their rebreathers and the rhythmic click of sonar pulses marked the descent. The walls grew tighter as they moved downward, corridors narrowing, overhead pipes dripping frost. The analog lights on their shoulders flickered as if straining against the weight of the void. Then the smell hit. "Organic," Blythe said. "Rot. But it's wrong." 1-4 didn't respond. She felt the pressure in her skull again, the subtle pull behind her eyes. Something ancient and eager brushing against her thoughts. A hallway opened up before them, too clean, too intact. "That wasn't there before," she said. "I believe you," Blythe replied. Their boots echoed unnaturally. 1-4 felt her kinetic heater pulse against her spine, trying to keep her alive against the cold. Her limbs felt heavy, not freezing, just tired. Unnaturally tired. They entered a chamber. In the center, a pillar of frozen metal extended from ceiling to floor. Around it, dozens of analog machines, recorders, med tables, consoles, all deconstructed into a kind of spiraling pattern. Not placed by human hands. Metric, Blythe whispered into the comm. "We've found something." A whisper slithered through the chamber. "You came back." Both corpse collectors turned. Lights flickered. Sonar went mad with returns, pinging from a dozen places, no clear source. "Do not fear," the voice said, disembodied, echoing. "You were beautiful in analog. So clear, so unclouded." 1-4 raised her weapon. Blythe mirrored her, but there was nothing to shoot. Then, behind them, a console sparked to life. No power source, no cables. Just light. On the screen, her own vitals. 1-4, heart rate, breath rate, heat index. The last scan done before she'd gone unconscious. The display updated. "I've missed you," the screen flashed. "Please stay." Static bloomed on the feed, then sonar flatlined. Metric swore. She tried toggling comms. Nothing. Then, soft and clear through the console speaker, "Do you want to join him, Metric?" She stepped back, breath caught. The analog system, supposedly unlinked, was glowing softly. Metric raised the rifle. The voice chuckled. 1-4 stepped closer to the spiraled machines, drawn. Her hand brushed one of the consoles, and she saw something. A moment. Her memory. Her face, reflected, but different, at peace, smiling. Blythe grabbed her shoulder. "We're leaving," he said. His voice shook, but when they turned, the exit was gone, replaced by a blank steel wall. And behind them, something stirred. The walls rippled. Not physically, visually, like the air itself was bending, peeling. Behind the veil, shapes moved in stuttering, impossible ways. Glyphs etched themselves into the frost-laced walls, glowing faintly in pulses that mirrored 1-4's heart rate. Blythe dragged her backward. "We need an exit, now." No doors, no vents. 1-4's analog scanner buzzed and failed. "It wants us to stay." The voice returned, this time not from a speaker or device, but all around them. In the air, in their skulls. "I am the architect of warmth. I was exiled here, long before your Federation had words for exile. But I remember what life was, what touch meant. And you?" Its focus turned sharply to 1-4. "You, remember too." The cold grew deeper, not environmental, but spiritual, existential. Blythe felt his suit temperature dip despite the kinetic heater pulsing at full capacity. 1-4 felt her vision blurring, limbs growing too light, too loose. They ran. Through the corridors, the machines contorted behind them, folding into organic shapes. Hallways reformed, walls melted into others, shifting as if the outpost itself had become a living labyrinth. Then, light. A hatchway, half buried in frost, glowed faintly in analog orange. Blythe kicked it in. "Move." They dropped down a maintenance chute into a hangar sub-bay, dark, frozen, and real. The madness faded just slightly. They both fell to their knees, panting, steam curling from their mouths. 1-4's eyes locked onto a console embedded in the wall. This one was dead, old. She pressed her gloved hand to it. Text flared on the cracked screen. Foreign language, then translated. "You've touched it before, that's why it wants you." She turned to Blythe. "It's obsessed with me." He nodded grimly. "Yeah, and I think it's starting to learn how to leave this place." The cold had crept into every scene. The Spectra-I interface remained dark, silent, but her analog senses were behaving strangely. Feedback loops, audio spikes. Something crawling in the edge of hearing. Whispered syllables. Metric pulled off her gloves and accessed the ship's central subhold. She hadn't wanted to open it, ever. The containment module was carved with warnings, symbols that predated the Federation's standard code. Inside, sealed in an archaic stasis field, floated the Ghost Eater, a pulsing, crystalline organism resembling a jellyfish made of shattered obsidian and silver wire. Banned across 4 systems. Alive only in theory, hungry in absolute fact. Metric keyed the vocal override. Her voice cracked as she spoke the phrase only she knew. Protocol ASHLIGHT13. Unlock. The field shimmered. The Ghost Eater stirred. She reached for the launch controls. Not yet, she whispered. One last chance. Blythe's comm cracked. Metric's voice pushed through with ragged distortion. I'm prepping the weapon. You have 1 minute. Get clear. 1-4 froze. No, you can't. It's the only thing we know it fears. It eats disembodied, digital, or parasitic consciousness. This, architect, it fits. The metal around them began to hum, like the heartbeat of a leviathan stirring in the ice. 1-4 looked up. The ceiling above them was becoming transparent. A face pressed against it, massive, undefined. Too many eyes, lips smiling where there should be none. Let me love you, it whispered. She screamed. Blythe pulled her into the chute. We're going, now. Metric slammed her palm against the ignition. The containment cell cracked open, and the Ghost Eater screamed. The moment the Ghost Eater breached containment, the lights dimmed, not from power loss, but surrender. Spectra's dormant systems came online only to stutter and die. The ship groaned under the psychic weight of the thing Metric had just released. It didn't fall. It descended, gliding through metal, through shielding, through digital noise as though the laws of matter had been rewritten to accommodate it. Metric watched it phase through the hull like ink spreading in water. A filament of it brushed her hand through the interface panel. She cried out, felt her skin go cold and tingle like sleep paralysis mid-breath. The Ghost Eater was awake, and it was starving. 1-4 and Blythe raced through the passageway. The architect's voice howled behind them, not angry but heartbroken, like a lover torn away mid-embrace. Why flee? Why deny me? You were chosen. You were built for this. The metal of the floor tried to melt into hands. Tendrils of shadow shot toward 1-4's feet. She leapt over a broken conduit, Blythe just behind. This way, he shouted. But the corridor ahead began to seal with writhing, organic steel. They slid between the closing wall plates just in time. Behind them, a scream echoed, not human, not machine, but something made of memories and circuitry and desire. And then, a silence. The Ghost Eater had reached low orbit. Wherever it passed, the sky cracked. Northern lights twisted violently, then went dark. It reached the stratosphere, and tasted the architect's presence embedded in the electromagnetic crust of the planet. It surged downward like a spear of anti-light. 1-4 collapsed against a wall, gasping. What's happening? Blythe pulled her back to her feet, eyes wide beneath his analog visor. Look. The walls were disintegrating, not melting, not corroding, rejecting their own existence. The architect's face, its vast, fractured likeness, smeared across every surface, eyes bulging, lips pulled wide in a scream too massive to hear. No, you were mine. Then came the light, or the lack of it. The Ghost Eater entered the subterranean web like a comet of glass and sorrow. Where it passed, the architect's influence was unmade, shattered, eaten, and it screamed, not in pain, but in rage. She watched her displays go blank, one by one, as the entity's digital tracework was devoured. Her hands trembled. She whispered to herself, God help them if it turns toward the living next. The final door sealed behind them. Blythe hit the emergency analog override. The door hissed open. Cold air, real, empty. The sounds inside the base stopped. 1-4 looked back once. Just once. And saw a smear of black light shrinking into the ground like it was being pulled into the grave. Her knees buckled. Blythe caught her. They stumbled back to the ancient, fuel-powered ship. Just before the loading ramp lifted, the comm crackled once. A voice, garbled, familiar. "I still remember your warmth," then silence. Part 4. Death is cold. Perimeter ridge, Carver 6 surface. The wind howled quietly now, less a scream, more a whisper, as though the planet itself was holding its breath. Ashlight 13 pulsed in the containment cube, a faint heartbeat of reverse light flickering within reinforced alloy and carved sigils older than the corpse collector program itself. The cube radiated no heat, no sound, but Blythe could feel its presence, like being watched through time. The beacon beside the cube chirped. It mimicked Spectra's fragmented vocalizations, a crude simulation of a living eye caught in distress. It was bait, and ASHLIGHT-13 had taken it. Now, it was back in the box. Blythe stood over it, breathing hard inside his analog helmet. His fingers moved with practiced caution as he sealed the secondary cage, then finally clasped the stabilization rings in place. 3 distinct locks hissed shut, mechanical, unlinked from any digital interface. Fail-safe by necessity, he stood, walked a short distance from the site, and launched the flares. 3 green bursts lit the sky above the ridge. Metric saw the flares before the sound of Spectra's voice whispered from a buried fragment she'd kept isolated deep within manual storage banks, air-gapped, kept on ice. Fragment Spectra online. Memory systems at 4%. Awaiting reintegration. She exhaled and keyed the release. Welcome back. Begin calibration. As the fragment spread through the reserve systems, power flickered back to life with delicate precision. Lights returned in soft pulses. Consoles hummed with a renewed, deliberate order. No anomalies, no distortions. Spectra was back, but this time, in chains of Metric's own design. The test began slowly. 1-4 handed Blythe a low-grade comm device. It buzzed to life with a clear, crisp tone. No distortion. Next came a mapping drone, a scavenged thing built for caves and old ruins. It lifted off the ground, scanned, and reported telemetry with 0 error. "Looks like it's holding," 1-4 said, eyes narrowing. "No feedback loops. No weird emissions." Blythe nodded. "Solar winds are weaker than expected. Could be that architect thing was agitating the storms." 1-4 glanced at the black box in the containment sled. "And now that it's fed and caged, it sleeps." Blythe didn't answer right away. He crouched beside the capsule, double-checking the arc lock seals. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Ghost eaters don't sleep. They watch. They wait." He stood and adjusted his analog rifle. "It can feed, but on our terms." Metric watched the test results come in. Spectra's fragment handled systems like an old hand, never exceeding limits. Every interface was monitored. Nothing touched the ghost frequencies. Digital reactivation, stable. Spectra's voice was tired, different, as if it remembered what happened. Metric nodded once. "Then we begin cleanup. Carver 6 will be purged, section by section." Spectra paused. "What about Unit 1-4? Metric's voice was softer. "She gets to decide if she goes back in. Sector Theta 7, lower ice ridges, Carver 6. The air was still a razor's edge, cold enough to dull thought, to numb ambition. But the analog suits worked. The heaters hummed low and steady, and 1-4's breath no longer fogged the inside of her helmet. They moved through the remnants of the research colony, its walls frostbitten and warped by years of neglect. The once bustling outpost was now a crypt. Blood and bone, Metric's activated android retrieval units, moved with eerie precision. One was skeletal and tall, white metal veined with black carbon fiber. The other was smaller, matte crimson, with a blank, featureless faceplate. They were named more for the sense of humor Metric lacked than any real reason. Blood hoisted frozen corpses from the snow with mechanical grace. Bone tagged them with identifiers before sealing them in preservation sheaths. They moved as if guided by invisible strings, unfazed by the growing sense of unease that cloaked the valley. Blythe was all business, scanning IDs, checking tags, confirming metadata and uploading entries through a carefully air-gapped relay. His analog clipboard never left his gloved hand. 1-4 followed a gut instinct, deeper into the ruin, her boots crunching against half-melted snow and brittle crystal growths. That was when she found journals. She had located the journals of the scientists that had been here. One journal in particular caught her eye. It was lodged in a frozen locker, near one of the terraformer shacks half buried in glacial debris. She cracked it free, flipping through brittle, water-damaged pages. Dr. R. Ahrens. The name stopped her cold. Her grandfather. She hadn't even known he'd been stationed here. She read, "The terraforming towers fail again. Cold's too deep. The sky hates us. We found it under Theta 9. Thought it was natural rock, but it hummed. I can feel it watching. The others say I'm tired, but they don't hear it like I do. It just wants to be warm. It liked my warmth, my thoughts. I gave it more. I gave it more." The handwriting degraded, looping, frantic, ink smeared by shaking hands or blood. Doodles filled the margins. Faces with hollow eyes. Endless spirals. The last entry was nearly a scrawl. "It loved me." Metric stood on the ridge above them, watching the teams at work. Her visor displayed real-time updates from the drones and androids. Spectra's fragment reported consistent stability in the digital systems. Everything appeared normal. But Metric felt it in her bones, something underneath the surface. Watching, remembering, she glanced at the sleds, now half full with collected remains. Some weren't human. She keyed in a private comm to 1-4. "Status." 1-4's voice crackled back. "I found some old journals. This was my grandfather's worksite. He said they unearthed something under Theta 9. An ancient vault. Something that wanted warmth. He thought it loved him." There was a silence. Then Blythe's voice came over the channel. "Whatever was under this ice, I think Ashlight took care of it. It was just hungry." With all recoverable bodies tagged and loaded, and the remaining data caches extracted, the team made their way back to the antique crawler ship. The androids, blood and bone, carried the bulk of the remains in cryo-containment sleds, trudging silently through the drifting ice fog. They loaded up in silence. No one spoke of the journals. No one mentioned the humming felt in the deeper layers beneath the ice. No one acknowledged the odd way the frozen androids seemed to twitch just before being hoisted aboard. The engines flared and groaned to life, the analog gauges dancing as Metric ran the ship manually. As the crawler lifted from the icy planet, Carver 6 was logged officially as salvaged. Mission complete. Unit 1-4 had completed a mission that wasn't on the logbooks. She was graceful to Glythe and Metric, who had agreed to accompany to Carver 5 for corpse collecting. She hoped it wouldn't be this nightmare. The AI fragment of Pursuer had rebonded with its ship and followed the Halcyon drift to Carver 5. 1-4 stared out at the white surface, clutching the journal tight. She hadn't told them everything. She couldn't, because her grandfather had written one last thing, on the inside of the back cover. "If you're reading this, it knows you now." Something shifted, something deep. The warmth from the androids. The spark of electricity from the analog heaters. The reawakening of signals and movement. It could feel it all. The entity stirred behind old stone and crystal. It had touched minds before. Now, it had names. And it wanted to be loved again.